Welcome to Blue Collar Mystics, the under-the-hood approach to the depths of human consciousness. So many mysteries, so little time, so many big words. That's why we aim to take the mystical and make it practical, usable in your everyday life. And we want to hear from you. We want to hear your story. What happened when you started asking yourself the real questions? Like, who am I? What is this? Is it a hologram? Is this some kind of weird cosmic joke? Hey, these are the questions that we are trying to get to the bottom of as we explore the final rabbit hole together here as Blue Collar Mystics. Right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the show, Blue Collar Mystics, where sounds like somebody who's doing yoga on a tractor. I don't know, but we're happy to be here. We're stoked that you guys are here. I thought we'd do a little bit of a smush of an episode and talk about a couple of things that James and I both are pretty, well researched in, and that we know a little bit about, and kind of smush those things together, being story and the transurfing thing. People all the time are like, when are you going to do transurfing? Talk about transurfing. I get it all the time. It's the most requested thing, and that's fine. There's so many great models out there, and I think what they're ultimately all getting at is the story that we tell ourselves, because we're not just speaking in stories, we're also interpreting through our own stories as well. And there's a lot going on. So I thought we would talk a little bit about this. And, as people who writers, I think everybody's kind of a writer in a way. At least we should, try to get our thoughts out. I highly encourage that. And I thought this would be a good chance for us to talk about the idea of sort of the structure of story, what that is, what it means. We talked about some of this stuff before, but even through the frame of the idea of transurfing or manifesting or law of attraction or whatever your flavor is. For me, I like the transurfing book. It just laid stuff out just point by point so very well. And I shared it with James, actually. Well, it's been a couple of years now, something like that, right?
It's 3 years now.
Okay.
Holy cow.
The time flies.
Doesn't even seem like it.
It really doesn't. And so, he was like, man, should I really spend $50 on this book?
Well, it's like you gave me the audio, and as soon as I got past the second chapter there with pendulums, I was like, oh, I need to read this. I can't listen to this. I need to read this. And so I listened to the whole book in 2 football Sundays, and it was like, all right, I gotta get this thing down. I have to read this. It has to be in my hand. And it's like, there's I don't even remember where I heard this. You remember, it's something to the effect of, you remember what you hear, or you oh man, I can't. I had the quote written down someplace too. Damn it! I just
take your time, man. Take your time with it. Let it come up. It's okay.
Oh yeah, if you get what you hear, you remember what you see, and you know what you live. And to me, when you have a book in your hand, it's an experience. It isn't something it's something that you're actually living and feeling. There's an all-encompassing feeling with the book in your hand. It's like when you're listening, it's like, for me, it's like, I always feel like when I listen to a podcast or when I listen to a book on tape, I'm almost taking emotional notes for what I have to read later on in real time.
Yeah, man. I love that. I think that's so true. There's something about experiencing something it just is different. I heard even stories that Einstein would be frustrated, because they'd be out sailing and his kid didn't understand the things that they were teaching them in physics class, but he couldn't apply them, in on the ship, on the boat. It's like his frustration. And I am a big fan of experiential education too, because I think we all find certain ways that really work for us. You know, it's like it's trying things out. It's being an actual scientist, because we are scientists. We're here testing reality and seeing what happens and taking the evidence from that and drawing new conclusions. And that is how we're crafting our own story about how we're interacting with the world, how it interacts with us. Are we a victim to it? Are we, you know, dominating it? You know, are we, you know, gliding along with it? And so like the idea of transurfing is to go like nature with the least amount of resistance, right? It's like, it's not no resistance. There's going to be resistance. There's going to be challenges. Those things are going to happen. But how do you react to those on sort of one level? You've got, if you react to those in a negative way and start getting angry, now you lose control. Ultimately, story is about control. At the beginning of every story, there starts a main person, a protagonist, somebody that we get to know, and they certainly have a flaw. They have some sort of a blind spot, and they're trying to get control. And that's the struggle throughout the whole rest of the movie. And we can talk about those parts, and I think we will disassemble the structure, because I think it's really helpful. It's like, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Fact or fiction? They're the same thing. The mirror reflects, as above, so below. You know, whatever you broadcast is reflected back at you. All these metaphors and ideas, it's all wrapped up in there with this idea of story, of narrative. And yeah, I'm giving stuff away in the chat. I feel a little like Oprah, which is fun. I need to find, I want to give more stuff away. I'm going to find some other stuff to give away too, guys. So,
you know, it's you said something about, you know, the protagonist is flawed, unless you're Michael Corleone, and then you start off right and you end up broken. Sometimes the arc goes the other direction.
Yeah.
By the end of Godfather 3, he had his brother killed, his daughter was murdered, all these things, and his whole life had fallen apart. And he started as like the soldier who was a goody two shoes and didn't be part of the family business, you know. And so sometimes the story can go the opposite direction, which, you know, and in this context, we sure hope it doesn't.
Well, yeah, absolutely. We sure hope it doesn't, of course, but like it can. Like, that's why I think it's like, don't judge. Because like that person out there who just completely came unraveled and lost everything that they had and just went down the fucking shitter, you know, for lack of a better way to say it, whatever, that could be you, man. They say in the church, you know, if not for the grace of God, that's me. And I've always understood that, because all you have to do is just, you know, completely disregard and just go down that downward spiral, negative thinking.
Everybody is one furnace, one car, you know, blown engine, or one revenue stream away from, you know, being homeless, you know, if they don't have a really good plan. So, you know, it definitely, you know, and not to say that any of that stuff is bad, because, you know, some of the darkest moments have brought the most light, and you know, but you have to be able to process it and understand, you know. And I always like to say, it's happening for you, not to you.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, and sometimes that might be taken as being naive or toxic positivity, but unless you change your perspective on things, you know, you're going to just still be the victim. And so you have to at least reframe it. And but, you know, usually you don't learn in comfort. And
no, you don't.
It takes some, you know, losing someone you love, or losing a job, or, you know, losing a goal, or losing something to understand the power of change, and understand, like, if you know, you just lost this very important thing to you, and if you don't change, then you know, it's not going to get any better. You're the common denominator to your pain and suffering.
Yeah, we're all changing. I mean, that is really the only thing that stays the same, right? It's such a cliche or whatever, but it is true. I'm going to share my screen here because I'm excited about kind of relating this. You know, we need to look at ourselves a little bit as this character. No, not that we don't already, right? Like everyone kind of does. We see ourselves in the center of our own film. but the idea of, just kind of where we begin, what happens, and the change is demonstrated in the, I don't know why it's pulled up Kung Fu Panda. But the beginning is, here I am, and something's missing. I want something more, something kicks off at the beginning of any one of our forays into adventure. And then we start to have a group of people kind of assemble here and act in the second part. I need to be doing it over here for translate. A group of people kind of form here, and then up here we kind of get the thing that we set out for, but we understand that it has maybe some unintended consequences, and we're forced to reconsider if it's something that we want. It's kind of like you were saying before. It's like you could go backwards, right? Like you could absolutely, devolve as a character and go down, or what we would consider to be down, not rise up to that next challenge. But we are all in one of these phases during our story. If we're at the beginning here where we're like about to start out on a new journey, think about it for yourself. Like, where are you at? Are you starting out on a new journey? Are you, encountering conflict along toward your goal? Are you at the point where you're wanting to give up? That's the fourth part. And then the fifth part is that big decision where you continue to barrel through, even though it's difficult. And that's where it's, or you, like my dinner with Andre or whatever, you go back home and you go kind of back into your sort of cocoon, if you will. Yeah, I don't know. That's one of the structures. There's a lot of them. I really love Dan Harmon's structure a lot. I'll see if I can find that actually as well.
Is that Rick and Morty?
Yeah, that's the Rick and Morty guy. Yeah. Well, basically, he took the hero's journey, which is also synonymous with this stuff. But he does the story circle, and I really like the five act structure. But we've got his stuff right here. Yeah, here we go. I'll even pull up the Rick and Morty graphic for us. So hang on. All right. I just need to do this. Oh, nope, this. Okay, there we go.
I've also always liked the thesis, antithesis, synthesis.
So
it's like where you begin, where you're going, which is against and uncomfortable to where you were, and then pulling that together to make the decision against your character or against what everyone thinks your character is.
Yeah. We can look that up too. Yeah, but here's the story wheel. It's the simplified version of the hero's journey, basically. And Dan Harmon would say, if a story doesn't follow the structure, it's not a story. I think Jeff Lyons would probably agree with that, because he talked a lot about situation versus story, but yeah, kind of going back through the 5-part thing. You're in a zone of comfort, but you want something. An unfamiliar situation arises. You have to adapt, get what you want, but you pay a heavy price. Return to the familiar situation having changed. That's the basic gist, the basic outline there. But yeah, it's so dope. He did such a great job of just taking that. There's all these articles you can actually find that where he takes the hero's journey and simplifies it and distills it down. I'll see if I can't find those as well. Let me hop over and do that real quick. But yeah, I'll find that synthesis as well.
I mean, essentially, that's just a thesis, antithesis, synthesis is just a very simplified version of that wheel you just showed.
Which is great. Big fan of that. The simpler, the better, I feel like. So I can find a lot of different graphics, but they're not popping up high. Hang on. Let's see what I can do here. Dialectic of the progression of ideas. This is also Hegel, if I'm not mistaken. Does that seem right? dialectic progression of ideas.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, it's what every time you come up with a new discovery, it is a synthesis of things that you haven't addressed yet, right? And so you know what you know, and then new information comes, and then you have to synthesize the old with the new to create whatever it is you're creating. So it's definitely that's a neat little graphic. I like that, the two twisted together.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and that's how all stories are sewn, you know. Yeah, we could look at this from a number of different angles and lenses. But I wanted to talk a little bit about specifically, you know, the transurfing idea and how it talks about this, because basically what it does and what any methodology really does is it arms you with a way to retell your story, to basically take the story that maybe hasn't been so positive for you and apply it to you so that it is more positive, right? Like, as you know, the law of mentalism you talk a lot about. Really, it's about, okay, so my friend Lehman said this one time, and it always stuck with me. I really loved this. He said, if I want to shave my face, I don't put the razor blade up on the mirror, you know? And really, the idea of, you know, where the cause begins and ultimately the effect in the exterior world, really illustrating that mirror principle, you know, the idea of transurfing. And I want to try to boil the idea of transurfing down to as simple as possible.
I mean, that's also goes back to Hermeticism. Is you are the cause point, right? It's you have to make all these decisions, and you're in a feedback loop, whatever you know, of whatever inputs that you're giving value to. You know, and that's the thing is we are a probability processing machine, right? It's like we're just processing all this data and all these variables and coming to safe conclusions, and they're not necessarily right conclusions. They're coping, you know, they're coping through things that we necessarily aren't comfortable with or don't agree with or are scared of. But we're giving it value still, and that's where, you know, in transurfing, what I really believe one of the most important things in the transurfing game is inner guardian. It's being fully aware of where you're at with things emotionally and what those outputs are. Because the inputs, you know, you don't necessarily have control over. It's the output that you command, right? And so being aware of that output, it allows you to literally make the choices that create the story as if you were watching one. Is that character that you know, that is a model for the metaphor of the unknown, is literally making it a choice, and you're making a choice all the time. And that's another transurfing concept. Is
Yes,
you're literally in charge of those choices, and you have to be conscious of the choices you're making in every moment. And that's where story comes in, really, because ultimately the protagonist is making a series of choices that are uncomfortable in this new antithesis from the old world, right?
yeah, and they're affecting the story, right? Like they're taking something into their own hands, usually, unless it's a situation. If it's a story, they are. If it's a situation, or at least by Jeff Lyons' definition, which I agree with, then, you know, maybe they're not. Like a situation we could talk about real quick would just be, you know, like a Godzilla kind of scenario, or like a haunted movie or something like that. That's there's no plot, there's no character development. That's not really a story in that sense. But the
We
story,
gotta get away from danger. And
exactly, something happened to us, right?
It's
Like,
a passive passive protagonist at that point. It doesn't matter if they shoot everybody in the room or save the girl or any of that. The protagonist is passive because they're not really making choices based on an arc or a change. They're just responding. And that's what we get caught in, really, in life, is that loop where we're just not paying attention to our choices. We're an autopilot responding, right?
exactly. Well, that's why presence is important. You know, I remember, and I think like so many people in the self-help movement, they just want to rub presence on everything. Like, just be present and it'll fix itself. You just be a compliant little, robot, and everything will work out just to how you want,
Oh, you got
but it's
presence deodorant?
yeah, right. Like,
Just gotta just put it on there and get rid of all that stink, right?
but yeah, I mean, presence is important. Absolutely, I'm not trying
Yeah.
to, downplay that. But I think the big reason why, the big takeaway is not just, oh, well, just don't worry about it and just be a passive observer through life. It's not about that. We want to be active observers. We want to create reality. That's what we're here for. And so if we can be present, then we can have that presence of mind, like you're talking about, the inner guardian. What up, Abby? What up, everybody in the chat? Tee hee hees. Oh man, I just got over to the chat. It looks great. Yeah, we're good. We're gonna. Did you ever read? Tufty, James?
I actually never got into that, but it's I mean, I was reading so many books when that got introduced to me.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. Well, so the metaphor that you're talking about is a lot about, like, he really alludes to it in Reality Transurfing, but in Tufty, she flat out fucking says it. Like, you're a character in a film movie archive of infinite film rolls. And that's what she's talking about throughout that movie. That's the whole metaphor. So in Transurfing, it's like, you have infinite timelines. In that, it's like infinite film rolls and being that character. And so that presence is really what allows us to create reality, as opposed to being that passive observer. So what she says is, we amount to being snails, that we're not aware, that we just react to whatever happens to us, when in reality we should be aware, conscious, beings, being present and creating our own reality, with that whole with that presence, like maintaining and creating that presence. And one of the things that she says too in that book is that all these things are not happening to us, that we can't see that it's actually for our benefit yet. We just can't see.
Just like the story, just like the protagonist doesn't know.
Exactly. Just like the protagonist. Yes. The protagonist doesn't know. He thinks the sky is falling. It's that fourth act. That's the dark night of the soul. And that's why I like that 5-act sort of structure, because it really shows you, like, the beginning of this person who's kind of, just regular. We see who they are, right? Like, if it's the Big Lebowski, he's buying milk with a check. We see who they are at the beginning. And then something has to happen throughout that whole arc. And there becomes a gang, and there becomes a common shared goal. And then, it seems like the goal is going to get accomplished. And then their hopes are dashed. And now the character is all, is it even worth doing anymore? Second guessing himself. They're hot or cold. They're lukewarm. They're not sure. And then they either, evolve at the end of the movie and become and change. Well, they change either way, but they either change for the positive of what we think Hollywood positive, happy ending, or they change negative toward that, devolution kind of thing as well.
It's back to the it's happening for you and not to you type of thing too. It's like, and I use this my own story to iterate that all the time, because when you hear just the outline of the story, you know that there is trouble and trial and tribulation through it. And if it wasn't for the house I lived in burning down on Christmas, and losing a business, and losing my girlfriend at the time to drugs, I wouldn't have made room in my life for the life that I have now. And so, I could have stayed in a toxic relationship, stayed in a house that I shouldn't have been in, and staying in a business that I shouldn't have had no business being in. Right. And because they were, sort of working or comfortable, and then having it all just pulled from under me like a rug all at once. It was painful, but it literally brought me to where I really wanted to go. But the universe doesn't just like give you things; it makes you take a journey, right? And there was a lot of pain and suffering at my own negative feedback, but eventually it did make room for exactly what I truly did want, and which was being a filmmaker, being a musician, having a real impact on people's lives. And but it couldn't happen without that drastic, horrible change that seemed unfavorable at the time.
Yeah. Dude, I mean, that's the thing about it. So we're kind of trying to resolve these things because it's real easy in the new age world to just sort of live in like woo woo fairyland. Everything is great. And yes, just be present and it's all happening for your good, and then just get on the train. Yeah. Don't even worry about it. It's, and versus, you know, uh, having real challenges to overcome, real adversity to face, real true growth. And we want to sit down and just manifest the stuff out of thin air and make it so easy, but sometimes the pain is what makes it worth it. And or at least it's been that way in my experience. Especially looking back, you don't realize it at the time, like you were saying, but I think that's what these books are trying to basically say, right? Like that everything really is happening to your advantage. And the more that you can, because in those difficult times too, I think the way that we react, and Janine kind of planted this seed in my head. She was like, however you respond in those times, that's the anchor, that's the timeline anchoring that you're doing. So
now.
Yeah. That's so bam, this crazy shit happens to you, this train wreck, because train wrecks still happen. There's going to be weird things that you did not account for or expect, always going to happen. And so we have to have responsibility for ourselves and how we manage those situations. The better we manage those situations, I think the better that trajectory gets for that character. And it might even be similar to what it would have been with a bad attitude. But also, I think you open up better experiences, and you get to really have depth and range in your moment, whatever that is, and really you get to absorb that whenever you can kind of appreciate being in that moment right now. It's like, okay, I'm in this sort of fourth phase, fourth act in a way of something where I've been working at it and doing pretty good, and all these things have happened, and then but it's kind of drudgery. It's kind of that dark night of the soul time. If you can have that presence of mind to push through that, well, instead of being whipped by the story and now you've devolved, let's say you got beat by the dragon or whatever, then that can help you have the resolve and really actually enjoy the experience. Because like you take those notes and kind of, when we get to the end of this whole idea, spoiler alert, bringing the story back to people and talking about what happened to you and what your experience was, that's really the gift when it comes all back full circle. It's a way to help somebody else, save them time, keep them from having to learn the same lesson that you've had to learn, and that's really powerful right there. But I think that's really what these books are trying to tell us. Not that it's going to be, challengeless, that we're just going to wake up one day and all of a sudden it's just going to be easy. Like, it's not going to be easy. That's not what it's saying.
It's never going to be easy. In fact, right when you get it, a new tragedy is going to, a perceived tragedy is going to step in the way and challenge what you think you've grown or known to grow. It's like the universe is going to keep meeting you wherever you've grown to keep challenging, your assumptions. And you should always be challenging your assumptions and testing them, and this, also too is, the more you grow a new perspective. And, it's like in the Enneagram, right? I really started in a 7, but I feel like I've really moved more into a 5 at this stage, and so I feel like, and that, but the 7 where I was at when I learned what it was the most powerful tool that I learned about myself. And now it's like from a new perspective of that 5, I have to learn that 5's perspective, because you're going to change throughout your life, because you're going to continuously have a synthesis of experience and knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll just throw this up here just because, not trying to switch subjects on people, but it's a very valuable tool. And if it's not something that you're familiar with, it's something that we both are huge advocates of for using for self-understanding, is the Enneagram, as well, ironically enough, as for story, because you can plug in your character to this model and it will tell you pretty much everything you need to know about that character, even and up to and including the antagonist
Yeah.
of that character,
Well,
what they're afraid of, what they don't like, what they do like, what their motivation is.
yeah, the motivations and the evolution and de-evolution of a character too. It's all correct. It's all right there easily, and that's where actually my story and the screenplay that I've written really took a change is when I applied this concept to it, and then I learned what a 7 was, and I learned that I was a 7, and then the growth just exploded at that point. Because what I really learned is I'm the life of the party because I like to have fun to hide from the pain, and I didn't realize that ever, and I needed to read that to realize the behavior. But that's one of the big secrets is stepping into the pain, and once you step into that pain and you realize that your mind was telling you it was more painful than the actual pain that you live, and then you just end up getting more things done. But yeah, I do feel that the Enneagram falls directly into story, and it's a magnificent tool.
Yeah, it really is. It's helped me to understand myself at a much, much better level in a healthier way so that I know, when I need to communicate certain things that I thought people just knew intuitively before. Right. So it's been incredibly helpful for me for that. Like I say it, I've probably said this too many times, but it's like, we think that we put ourselves in other people's shoes, but we put our own disposition in their shoes. So we're not really in their shoes. We're in our shoes and their
Our
shoes.
filters through their shoes. This is how I feel if I was living their life.
Exactly. So, it's really helpful for that because you can find out. It's like love languages, for instance. Like when you just find out about that, if you're dating somebody and you find out that they have a different love language, you're like, oh, well, all of this other stuff makes sense. This makes absolute sense. And through the Enneagram, I think this is something that should be taught in school. It's like, it's a psychological tool. It's a spiritual tool. It's so powerful, yet so, I don't want to say so it's simple, but you could study it for your whole life. There's just so much depth to it. But anyway, I'll just I'll tap the brakes on that. But yeah, we want to get you guys in here. Let me see if I can get a link going. If anybody wants to come in here, let's hear from you, your story, what is popping, how you interpret this stuff. I really like talking about it, and I like this filter through it, to think about story and how you kind of resolve challenge too with manifestation, right? Because those challenges, they're not going, at least in my experience, maybe I'm doing something wrong, but those challenges have really not gone away. Well, the way that I deal with those challenges has changed, right? Yeah, it's not that the mountain has it really gone away or anything. I just have a different sort of attack plan.
The older you get, you take responsibility because basically mostly through your 20s and 30s, you learn through folly, right? And then eventually you take responsibility for your learning preference. It's like, I don't want to learn through pain. I want to learn through preemptive. And so you start taking the time to read about yourself or read about life or read about marketing or read about whatever your biggest challenge is to where you're trying to go. It's education in another way, self-educating.
How to ask the right questions and challenge ourselves in the right ways. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, they got the Socratic method. I coined the term the auto-Socratic method. So ultimately, I've always intuitively known, but really agree with now that all the answers are inside of you. And so the more that you look outside of yourself for the true answers, the more that you're discrediting your position. And you have to ask yourself the right questions and be honest with those answers, right? And so self-deception, as people talk about how they don't like liars, but most people lie to themselves more than anyone lies to them, and so it comes down to asking those right questions and then being honest with your answers with yourself. And a lot of that comes through a practice, meditation, or exercise, and being in, because it takes being in a physically and mentally right spot to not lie to yourself, right? And so you got to have things that keep your body moving and your mind still. And once you can hit those states, so much stuff happens and that you can't even explain. And for instance, I'm not an engineer, but I actually designed a vending machine once, right? And I didn't study to get the answer, but one day that answer just popped into my head. I was driving down the road, not thinking. My mind was still, and then the answer just dropped in right on me. And I didn't get it from a book. I didn't get it from anywhere. The answer just appeared. And I feel like a lot of scientists and a lot of people who are thinkers know this. Get to a point where like that, like, you know, if you've created something that's never been created before and you're having original thought, and that that will drop in the more comfortable you are, the more that your mind is still. And you're not going to get that from somebody else. You're going to get that from you, right? And you know, back in before 1950, um, all the doctors didn't have PhDs. They were just self-studied. You know, like they were scientists. Like it wasn't you know, the PhD is a fairly new thing.
Hmm. That doesn't surprise me. I'm not at all shocked to hear that. Well, I think, you know, it comes back to the idea that we interpret too through story, right? Like we have a story that we filter everything back through. So a story is being told to us. It's our innate language to speak in this way, and we can tell when it's being done. What's funny about it is it is so innate, but like there's so much to it. There's so much range and depth to it that to where you can really study it and really understand all the nuances and components and all that kind of stuff. But we know when it's a good story and we know when it's not a good story. It's really freaking obvious. And that's how
Yeah,
people, you know, it's like the person who can't tell a story, you know, and it's like,
yeah,
and then I found $1, you know, or like whatever, you know, people used to just add that tag because their story was shit, you know, and they just got roasted. But it's because we know, you know, but we're
uh,
also okay.
Abby asked me to repeat that. I was like,
Yeah, I see that.
I said something to the effect of you have to still the mind and move the body. um, and and that just gets you to into a state of equilibrium essentially. Because essentially what happens is we're in our mind all the time, and we got this problem, that problem, blah 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 blah, and we live in this day and age with all the stimuli and everything delivered in this. We live in a very sedentary lifestyle, right? And so, you know, we're made to hunt and gather and travel and move, and then we slow our bodies down, and you know, and we're not in a state of equilibrium. And that state of equilibrium, when we're out of it, the more that we come out of touch with our inner self. And then that's where, especially where a lot of these quote unquote bad things begin to happen. But ultimately, what are they doing? They're We're creating our own misery to bring us to a point where we know we have to change, right? And so as most people get to a point of disease or discomfort before they start to get to a point where they're like, well, maybe it's me. Because it's easy to just blame all kinds of things outside of you, but in the end, we're the common denominator of all of our decisions. And sometimes that it comes back down to choices. Transurfing again is my choice is to sit here today and feel sorry for myself. So I'll be in my mind and I won't be moving. And that's exactly where that we're taken out of that equilibrium. And then, you know, again, we're not in our power, and we're not in our power. We look for everything outside of us to kind of help us get there. And really, it's all within our reach all the time.
So Gord is asking, was your vending machine idea proof of the eternity archive that everything already exists in the information structure and you downloaded the idea?
I mean, I don't like the concept of downloading, because that definitely says something outside of you. I mean, I kind of operate from the thing that it's all I'm a sliver of everything, right? And so it's where I'm here to create in a micro macro type of space. And so yeah, I don't know if as much as downloading, but absorbing or becoming aware of, being on the vibration of, becoming in resonance with something. It's like ultimately speaking, when
Discovering, right?
yeah, ultimately speaking is when, you know, it's like you write a business plan, right? and you're like, I'm going to be in business, and you start writing this business plan. What are you actually doing? You're on a vibration. You're thinking about these things. You're imagining all the possibilities of this thing you want to create, and eventually you're creating through that vibration. You're getting in resonance with stuff that's already there, and just that version of yourself on that timeline versus the worst version of yourself working in a factory someplace being miserable, right? It's like, where are you taking your thought process, and for this particular journey that you chose. It's like we're all kind of, you're getting deep into philosophy. It's like I kind of believe that I chose this particular meat bag for this journey, and I'm tuning into all the possibilities and light, and what do they call them, lifelines in transurfing.
Yeah,
Lifelines. I'm a little I know the concepts, but I've lost some of the vocabulary. But yeah, you're getting into a vibrational alignment with the possibilities of everything, and you can't think of everything, and you can't be part of everything, but everything is there, and once you get into that vibration, you could call it whatever too. It's a lack of semantics. You could call it downloading, resonation.
It's all the same. It's all the same, but how do you choose to define it, and what is your story about it, right? Like, your story is, the way that you experience this. Somebody else might have a different way, and a lot of, like, I think that downloading is a common thing that people say, in the movement or what have you. But yeah, like, I like the idea too of, that ultimate access exists. So in essence, saying that there is some sort of infinite archive. And there's even a book that I have on the shelf. It's called Sparks of Genius. I think everyone in MIT has to read it. But they talk about creativity as well in there, and they talk about that space, because that space that doesn't come from active thinking. Like, discoveries don't come from like lab tests or like actively thinking about a certain thing. They come in those moments. They just kind of, they just flash into your consciousness, into your awareness, as opposed to, you kind of got to work for it too. I get that. There's that aspect of it too, the creative aspect, and there's a dance there. But like, that's what they say so much in that book, is that the ideas themselves, it's like Norm Macdonald's joke was always like, where do you get your ideas from? He just asked everybody.
That was on the tip of my tongue. I was waiting for you to finish. When you say I'm thinking, who's saying that statement, and how are you taking ownership in this vessel for something that's probably not even happening directly inside of you? It's like we are we are just a big conglomerate of energy and vibration, right? And so is all of this, and getting into attunement, alignment, downloading it, whatever you want to say. But it's like, for instance, it could even take the sonic portal. I'm not the first person to play with gongs, and I eventually just created this spaceship, right? It's like they were sort of active thoughts, but they were also like shots of inspiration and spark that literally led me through a decade of journeys and adventures, right? And so when I could go back and say, oh, I thought of using the icosahedron structure, and I thought of this, and I thought of that, but ultimately, did I? Because they just happened, like, and I just reached out and kind of grabbed those handles, and so it really comes down to, if you want to own your thoughts, sure, but there's parts of me that have seen such magical moments in my life where I feel like you can call it a higher self or your soul or whatever, God, any kind, whatever you word you want to attach to it, but ultimately, like, we're just leading this journey of the unknown, right? And the more that you're gonna give your focus, and I say this all the time too, your emotions, the power behind your magic, Your magic is your imagination, and your focus is where that magic happens, right? And so what you're giving focus and attention to is exactly where your creations and things are going to come, and you're going to get tools, whether they're downloads or assumptions or whatever, that are going to allow you to keep creating, right? And that's where that thing comes. And so the more that we're consuming other people's shit in this day and age, the less that we're getting in touch with and in tune with our potentiality. And it's like I can feel a shift on a lifeline, or all of a sudden it's like, bing, everything just started. What do they call it? The wave of fortune, where everything just works correctly, because now you're basically in resonance on the journey of where you're supposed to be going.
Yeah, it's a big challenge to kind of guard your mind and not, or for me at least it is, and not like listen, because there's so much information out there. There's so much shit. And it's mostly people just covering the same thing, in their own different way, and you can just kind of get lost in there as much as that's the whole point, right? Like it's so easy to just get lost in there. I love what Virginia says here. She says it's about unlocking your own doors that you created, but you have to see the door, and what's behind it is a mystery. And most people are afraid of the unknown and they don't bother. And so, yeah, back to this idea of story, right? Like the descent into the unknown, right? If I was to pull up the hero's journey, that's exactly what happens, right? In the circle, back to that wheel, Dan Harmon's wheel. But, in the longer form of it is the hero's journey. And it's the descent into the unknown and then into the abyss, the uncertain. And that's what I think most people are afraid of. I'm afraid of it too. And it's like, you don't know what you don't know yet, right? Like that's a real cliche to say, but you don't know what's coming. Like it's going to be some shit that you did not expect. It's one thing to sit here and be like, all right, well, I'm going to do this thing, and I know there's going to be challenges or whatever, and there will be, but even then you can't really understand. Maybe that's why sort of the metaphor of the dragon is something that's so pervasive over time, is because it's something that you can't even really conjure up in your own mental, realm of the sort of next aspect of that adventure and the unfolding of it, because it's going to be a surprise no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise, what the hell are you doing any of this for if you're not going to surprise yourself through the process, right? It's like, if you knew everything that was going to happen in your life, like, I've seen Caddyshack 100 times. I know what's going to happen in each of those things, and I'm fine with a lot of it, but it's not a surprise, right? And that's what the story is this adventure of unfoldment, and there's got to be conflict in a story to make a story even interesting, right? I was just explaining this with my stepfather the other day. We were talking about movies and story. If you and me decide that we're going to go we're going to cook a meal today, and we go to the grocery store and we get in the car and everything, the ride is perfect, and the time in the grocery store is perfect, and the ride home is perfect, the meal's perfect, everything's perfect. Where's your fucking story? There is none. So, but if we went out and we lost our wallet, and the tire got a flat tire, and someone tried to rob us, and they didn't have what we wanted, and we had to go to a bunch of different places, and then we finally get home, and against all odds, we cook a great meal for the birthday meal for our old grandmother who's coming to dinner. Well, that's a story. And so we both have the same thing that happened. We went out and bought some shit and cooked a meal, right? But it's the conflict that creates it and makes it interesting. And it's like nobody would watch the movie where everything worked right. Nobody cares. Why would they care?
Why would they care? They wouldn't care.
I cooked a meal and it worked. It was great. It was what you call routine and business as usual, right?
Yeah.
It's the break of the hypnotic rhythm and the conflict and the unfoldment of against all odds that makes something interesting. And you could write that screenplay of, having to, make a birthday meal for someone and the whole thing going haywire, right? But it would have to be a lot of conflict. And so when you look at that, that's a model, like a story is a metaphor for the unknown. That's a model for life, right? And like nobody cares if things are working right in this business as usual. It's not, it's not news, no, and it's just minutia. And it's like you can brush your teeth 1,000 times. you're gonna only remember the one where the one time that one thing didn't work out, right? And every other time is just it happened.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, so I mean, I think I just everywhere I look, I just keep seeing, I keep seeing these very same models in operation, conscious or subconscious. And I believe there's another one of these too. Oh shit, I'm doing the thing with the mouse where this is the conscious world here, and this is the subconscious here. And so this going into this unknown, the extraordinary world, it could also be just unknown, like starting out at the beginning, and then they cross the threshold, trial and first failure. All this stuff is learning. This is a learning curve. All this down here, growth, new skills, first success. And then there's this like, oh, I got the thing sort of that I want, but it's not what I thought. And I think we can all relate to that, right? Like if ever you've accomplished a goal, you've been like, yay, I did it.
That's another thing though. Is like, really, you better actually know what you want, because you actually might get what you want and it's not going to be that cool, right? It's like, what do I mean, I think people might not realize that they're manifesting so many things in their life so often. And I can't even tell you how many times I've actually got the object of desire that I wanted and been like, so what? It's the things that were most rewarding were the things where as things that I've created, not things that other people have created, or things that are constructs that other people sold me. It's like, I really am thankful that I never chased a degree or anything like that. Mm-hmm. Just would make me happy. That was my grandparents' model.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Well, knowing what you want, that's so important. And it takes a long time to get there. I threw it in here one time. I'll throw it in here again. And there's one, I put it in the show notes. I think I made this little manifestation guide thing. It was something that I made maybe a month or a couple months ago or something. And I was like, man, this is pretty good. I think I'm going to put this out on Audible and on Amazon and stuff. And I will eventually, but for now, it's available there. And there's a couple emails and stuff that will come, just transurfing blogs mainly. And I don't know, I just, that alignment and knowing what you want is so important. My dad said something to me one time that really, really stuck with me. And that was, I was going through a breakup at the time. And he was like, it's better to want something you don't have than have something you don't want. And that is so true. Like, just having that presence of mind, having that ability to be present, that inner guardian to say, is this what I really want? Because if your heart says maybe, that's a no.
Yeah.
Like, the heart is certain. When you say, do you want this? Then the heart, there's no hesitation. The heart's like, yes, it lights up and it does the little jazz hand emoji, like that little thing. And that's what it does. That's like, if it's maybe or no, then no, the answer is no. So, understanding that and keeping that in mind, one of the books that I think pairs really, really well with transurfing and everything that we're talking about right now is Steven Pressfield's book, The War of Art. Have you ever read that one?
No, I haven't.
It's pretty short, but it's good. There was one on Scribd too, and I believe The War of Art's on Scribd. I need to read it again. I have a friend who's excellent at what he does. He's a really good director and super duper creative, brilliant guy. But he reads that book every single year, and it's basically talking a lot about resistance and meeting resistance, going through that resistance over and over and over again. Because Pressfield was one of these guys that he worked really, really hard for years and years and years and didn't have much in the way of sort of success until his 50s, I think, is when he first sold his first screenplay. And he's a writer. And I think the one that he sold was The Legend of Bagger Vance, if I'm not mistaken. But before that, he had all this, he'd been working on it. But every single day he showed up, and he talks so much about that resistance. And I think that dovetails really nicely with, the challenges that we've been talking about, even in that everyday everyday setting. A lot of the people that I'm seeing talking in self-help and stuff like that, they're saying, the hardest part of going to the gym is just going to the gym, right? Like if you get there, even if you didn't feel like going, when you get there, you're 99% going to go through with what you got to do because you've already made the journey there. And that's kind of his point in that book, is to sit down every day, to do the dedication, to do the thing, to write the morning pages, to sit down for 30 minutes and write every day or whatever. And if you can just push through that resistance and just chip away at it and have like a daily sort of routine that you can manage, then over time, there's no stopping you. Like the main thing is that resistance. What he says, and this goes double in transurfing, where whenever you like start out to do something, the universe will put up resistance against it. But if you push through that resistance, then that same amount of force will actually come and help you to do the thing, right? Like, so it's that balance of energy. It's the universe saying, yeah, are you sure? Are you sure? And then when you're like, yeah, I'm sure. And then, it's like the quote, I can't remember who said it, but I think Buddha said, if God gets in your way, cut him. Like that whole, it's that determined when you have that, when your heart is that sure, and you're like, this is the thing, then, I mean, as long as you can get through that resistance, then you're going to be able to make your goal.
So one of the struggles that I have is I don't ever have resistance with things I create. I can create with no resistance all day long. It's where I struggle is getting people to care after it's created.
Yeah.
And so, I just realized it the other day, and I think I'm going to take a course on copy, right? And basically that's about communication. Because ultimately, one of my other things is I don't care about anybody's approval, which doesn't really help with marketing, because you ultimately want someone to care, right?
Yeah. Somebody says I do in Facebook, and I can't see who you are, Facebook user.
I can see,
and I can understand. I can relate to that Facebook user. Maybe you want to stay anonymous, but I can.
It's Carla. But unless
awesome.
you got the Rockfin app, everybody's an anonymous Facebook user.
Right. Cool.
Well, thanks for sharing, Carla.
Okay. I forgot actually to put these links in the Rockfin chat. I'm glad you said something. If you guys want to hop in, if anybody's out there, you want to hop in and say what up, feel free. I'm going to put some other links in there as well. Just handing out some audiobooks here, guys. Stuff that was helpful to James and I, and I hope it's helpful to you. If not, no worries. The first 3 chapters alone of this book that I'm posting over there right now, fantastic. And I've got another little ditty, the manifestation guide that I was talking about is here. Put that link as well. Really appreciate you all for hanging out with us. It's so much fun to do this live. I finally capitulated to the YouTube algorithm authority, and gave them all my even more information to be able to do the monetization sort of thing or whatever. So we can accommodate different things on YouTube now. Hopefully that will kick the algorithm up, and we'll maybe get a little bit more exposure. If you guys can, please feel free to share some of this stuff out. You guys can do super thanks now and all that kind of stuff. Somebody had sent me a message about that. I didn't even know that was a thing. Thank you, person, for saying that. So I activated all of that. So hopefully, hopefully that'll help us grow a little bit. That was something that I neglected to do for the longest time, was to give more information. It's like Google, you don't already have all my fucking information. You know what I'm saying? Like you need more. Oh, okay. Yeah. Let me do a verification check, but it's all good. So hopefully that'll help us bump things up and all that. So I'm throwing some stuff over there, guys. A manifestation guide is really cool. That's something that I felt really empowered to kind of create and kind of walk through all the steps, because it's really about alignment and letting go of importance as a big thing as well. So those 2 things are kind of emphasized on the manifestation guide, but check the books. They're full of incredible nuance. And of course, I've got a ton of videos on transurfing on the channel and stuff. So, feel free to check that out and talk to us. Hit us up in the Telegram chat. If you got any questions about things, I've got so many freaking resources, and we've done a couple of, thank you so much, Virginia. That's awesome. Thank you so much. I've got so many different resources and different things like that, and I'm happy to share. I just want to see people do great things. And the great thing about the technology that we have now is if something works for me, I can lay it out and be like, here's the process that I sort of how I experience it and what I think, and bam, I can just in an instant send it over to you. And I don't think that I give enough props for that. Sometimes like I see the sort of the negative side of the technology kind of thing a little bit. And there's that whole spying on people thing too. I'm joking, mostly Google. I promise YouTube, I'm joking. But it's amazing that we're able to do this, and we're just building information on top of information on top of information and standing on the shoulders of giants. There's some amazing ideas out there, and we've never had more access to them. So it's really cool to be able to share it, and to share it, bam, so quickly, just like that. If you go to the website too, we've got the mentalism course that James put together, and it's awesome as well. So check that out. It comes with a little like 8-point sort of outline of things, and then you'll get 8 emails that talk about mentalism. Basically, is what we're talking about basically all the time. It's the primary fundamental principle of life and reality. The fact of it.
It's funny. Transurfing really, to me, after reading, I read the Bhagavad Gita at the same time as transurfing, and I was like, oh man, there's so many parallels between the two. And then I really learned about Hermeticism past those two concepts, and really they're just regurgitated Hermeticism.
Yeah,
ultimately, everything boils down to your choice. You are in a feedback loop. You are creating your own reality, and the choices you make. If something's good, well, you've decided it's good. If you decide it's bad, and you're really making value judgments on on things with benign values, right? It's like if I say something's bad here, well, is it bad to someone over on the other side of the world in China, or a rock? Or even we'll say a tree. A tree's alive. A tree doesn't agree with my assessment, right? And so really it comes back down to distortion filters and things like that. And our traumas and our failures and all these things create these distortion filters. And what do they call them? They call them slides.
Slides.
It's transurfing. I pretend I really resonate with the word filter, because ultimately we're laying down all these filters, and that's what's determining our reality. And then determination is really the lifeline that you're on at that point, right? It's like, and then you're basically creating, what's the positive version of the slides?
Positive. Well, I mean, you've got, slides are basically that's like your reality tunnel. So like Robert Anton Wilson would call that your reality tunnel. We're calling it our story. It's like the frame, the filter, the main thing that we kind of look through and how we see our world is that slide. That's how I interpret it. And you can also create a slide. That's what he's talking about, is like creating your slide and then molding your mind to form that slide, so that when your mind forms that slide, now you project that image into reality and the mirror reflects it back.
And then so you get a feedback loop with the slide that you've created. And basically you're creating a filter, a distortion, a good distortion instead of a negative distortion.
Yeah. So the distortion thing is cool. I really like this. And you make a really good point here, that everything is, as you say, benign or neutral, right? Like it doesn't have a meaning until we assign it to it. That's part of that story. So is it, Abby's saying maybe it's amalgam. I don't know. Amalgam I thought was like a way to kind of infuse certain things into the mirror, the visual or something. It's been a year almost since I've read the book. So
it's time to read it again.
It is. But I mean, if you think about it, like everything is already balanced. Like in his model, balance is the primary sort of thing.
Mm.
It's what allows bodies to congeal and things to have weight and mass and separate. Otherwise, we'd all just be floating goop, and going in every direction. So that's kind of where he starts that model. And so we see it, balances equilibrium. Well, I can predict that it'll be summer in July and, fall will happen in October or whatever. Right. And so that's how the equilibrium's happening. It's a cycle, but it's imperfect balance. Right. So it is, summer's not inherently better. Right. I might prefer it better to winter or whatever. They're all equal. They're all of equal value. But whenever I say that it is, now I'm going negative
Distortion,
1 to the 0. So we're creating
Yes,
distortion. So I'm trying to think of how that's outlined. And I don't know that it even is that he says it.
I don't think it is. I'm kind of overlaying my own
yes.
ideas over top of it. And, I don't even know if that distortion is really a hermeticism thing. I just saw it after, I had some pretty amazing shamanic experiences and immediately realized that everybody has overlying distortions, and really joy and positive feelings are also are positive distortions. They're not necessarily right or wrong. It's just, they tend to be more favorable because we enjoy them. They feel good, but it's still a distortion as to the benign value of whatever it is that's here. And, then you can take that good value to an extreme that's unhealthy as well. And that's where toxic positivity and things come in. And it's and it always comes down to a self-audit and a testing of your assumptions and understanding, are you perceiving reality? Are you perceiving reality the way that you have taught yourself to perceive it? Right. And that's what also makes a story fucking interesting too, is everyone has these levels of distortions, and some of them are all shared, and some of them are very distinct to the individual, and it's in that individuality and what creates these really rich characters, right? And so, what's better than seeing a really defunct, fucked up individual go through the arc of figuring it out, and that's what makes these stories interesting, is the fact that these distortions are present. And I love the idea of, what's the meaning of life? And in Hitchhiker's Guide to Galaxy, and the supercomputer says 42.
Mm-hmm.
42 computer language is an asterisk. An asterisk in the original DOS, an asterisk meant whatever you want it to be. Right. And so that the supercomputer comes up with that idea, and it really is what do you want to make of the time that you've inherited here and taken form in. And for some people, it's jumping out of airplanes, or jumping down mountains, or finding a cure, or writing poetry, right? It's and it always boils down to creating, right? Not consuming, and having and living through your own experience.
Yeah, I think following your own curiosity, where that leads you. There's so much, like I was saying earlier, about how much information that we have access to. It's amazing what we can do. I feel like a synthesizer of information myself, where I take a bunch of ideas and I can kind of cobble them together and trim the fat out and save people time. And I think there's a lot of people doing that, and a lot of people who are capable of doing that, all these different ways, to where it's not competitive. Because it's you can bring something completely different, and you are going to, just by following your own intuition and your own curiosity, than I would. But then we can cross over and we can bring our findings together, and then we can, merge them together, synthesize that. Now all of a sudden we've got a really cool new model, and then people can take that and then develop on top of that. So I think we're building some pretty amazing things as far as it's regarding there. And I had another point which is slipping my mind right now, but that's all good. I was mostly just wanting to relate this to all the metaphysical stuff, but there was one particular thing. I think it was back to the distortion thing. I really like that because that's seeing something, you know, out of alignment. That's what it was. So the thing I wanted to kind of touch on was the nuance of, you know, talking about like toxic positivity and having like a delusional sort of frame of mind as opposed to having a positive frame of mind. Abby said in the chat, it's the rose-colored glasses concept. And that was definitely something that I remember in the book where he was talking a lot about how, for sure, every single time if you have a negative sort of reaction toward whatever it is, then that's definitely going to make a negative distortion. But I think having a positive distortion is only unhealthy. And there's a specific word that I can't quite remember, but it's basically like a delusional, you know, positivity, or like it's so out of balance. There's a specific word and it's not coming to me for some reason or another, but you can be like in an unhealthy sort of state where you have created that distortion, and it can work against you as a balancing force. But for the most part, having the rose-colored glasses and just staying positive, not in a crazy way, but just in a typical way,
a balancing way.
It doesn't have negative consequences for you to have a positive attitude. Is basically the thing that I'm trying to get out of my mouth, but it ain't fucking coming. But anyway.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, and he does it and when we're talking about Vadim, in his book, he did it in almost a very habitual way. He would take every horrible or perceived negative thing, and he would make light out of it and say thank you and things like that, because he was trying to avoid the negative feedback loop, not because he was looking at it as being, I like this so much and putting this distortion on it. It was more about control. It's not a distortion as much as controlling his attitude towards it, which I think are two very different things. Because if, you know, you think, for instance, that all things got to have, you know, and we've talked about this a lot, Owen, is happiness isn't something you arrive at. It's a thing that happens in the moment. What people are shooting for is fulfillment, right? Yep. And so fulfillment comes with a whole range of things. It's eating healthy, it's loving, it's being loved, it's being part of something, it's feeling like your actions matter. And like throughout all that, there can be disappointments, there can be aggravations, but there's still fulfillment, right? And so what I think he's getting at isn't a distortion as much as a control of behavioral output. Whereas a lot of people, and you don't have, if you're not controlling the behavioral output and you're just like being toxically positive about something, I think those are completely different things. And, you know, the distortions can be, you know, thinking that, you know, that this is all about happiness, right? And not, it's really about the journey and what you're going to get out of it, what your soul's going to get out of this run. And you're going to get to the end of it and have been playing video games and watching TV and eating shitty food the whole time, and you're gonna get bitch slapped by your soul. You're like, oh, you didn't get any of it right, man. You sat there and consumed.
Yeah, I love that, man. Yeah, it's really like she said, if things work out, great. If they don't, even better. And it's so it's so easy to sort of forget that in the moment, but just allowing what it is, right? Like that takes so much of that importance away and that like stress to try to get it right, where you're just like, I'm going to do the thing. And it's cliche as hell to say the happiness is in the process, but it is. We have to find the things that we like doing. It's like, I heard David Barbie say one time in one of like his little TEDx talks or what have you. He's a music producer here in town, here in Athens. They did like a TED thing at UGA. And he was talking about how don't ask what you want to be, ask what you want to do. Because it's such a huge difference. Like if you want to be a music producer, then you're gonna need to like to wrap cable and stay out at the studio late at night and go fetch fucking lemons for prima donna diva lead singers. That's just part of the process. You're gonna need to want to do that. You know, if you want to make movies, then there's certain things that you need to be able to endure and enjoy on that process. And I love doing stuff like that. I'm a huge fan of it, but everybody wants the award and the prestige and the allure and the clout. Everybody wants that, but you got to, private victory precedes public victory. So you got to actually enjoy the process of creating. And that's really, I think, when the best and most amazing discoveries happen. And that Sparks of Genius book basically says just as much. It's like, that's what you want to get engaged in. So the flow state, right? Being completely present in the moment and enjoying that. And the more that you do that, the better the results get. So, I mean, I think that's true in a creative sense, as well as just a practical day-to-day life sense, like whatever it is, the littlest things, going to the shitty open mics, and enjoying it instead of being like, this sucks. Like I have that one idea where it's like, there's these two sort of realities. And you could either go down this trail and just fucking hate it and hate all the bullshit and all that stuff, or you can make the most of it. And who knows what can happen if you actually make the most of it. Like from a very practical, obvious sense, if I walk around with my head down and I'm always just like, oh, nobody likes me, nobody wants me to hang out with me or whatever, then certainly that's not going to make anybody go out of their way to want to prove me wrong.
Yeah. I'm definitely not calling you up and asking you what you want to do.
Exactly.
You're like, that's not going to be productive use of my time.
No, of course not.
But I'm reading a time management book right now. It's called 15 Secrets of Successful People, something to that effect. And in it, one of it is, it's literally outsourcing. And it's like, why are you going to do the minutia of things that you don't want to do? It was like, do the things you want to do and do the things that you're good at and find a way to get to leverage other people's time. Right. And so, ultimately we've all been taught through school that to trade our time for money. Right. And not to leverage, not to do any of these things, and to basically be someone else's passive income machine,
Right.
And so it's tough to take yourself out of that. But ultimately, if you could definitely find a sweet spot. And when I say outsourcing, I mean, even, having groceries delivered is outsourcing, calling up Uber is outsourcing. That's no different than having a chauffeur. Right. And so like, if you Ubered to some place in town or whatever, and you could get some work done in the process of that, and you're not driving, that outsourcing is working. And like, it's finding ways to make more time for yourself to do the things that you like to do, and doing what you're good at, doing what makes you feel right. And this is what, and I go back to, it's about loving yourself. Right. And it's like, if you are doing things that you enjoy, and that leads to a positive feedback loop. Mm-hmm. and you create more and more and more. It's like when I made my first movie, I just took an idea and it came to us where basically, in a nutshell, my director, he was a acute cardiac RN in a hospital, and I'm teaching him about trans fats, and he's like, you're just some hippie. You don't know. I went to school for this. The people I work with went to school for this. We know. We're in the know. And then he got to this point where I'm showing him. I'm like, look, y'all are full of shit. And he looked at me and was like, oh my God, how are you teaching me this? And we looked at each other and said, this is our movie. And so right when we made that choice, I literally started making contacts all over the country. And I nailed every interview except for the FDA. Right. And it's like the universe made space for me once we made that decision in that moment. And it was backed by our imagination. It was backed by our emotion. It was backed by our focus. And then bing, 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 all the way to marketing. That movie got made, and the process was amazing. Right. And there was a lot of, again, it was a lot of difficulties. There was a lot of roadblocks. There was a lot of things, but the process was so invigorating and so fun that all those things didn't matter. And the next thing you know, I have a movie. And next thing you know, I sold it to the Russian government. And next thing you know, it's on Netflix. And it's just like, holy shit. Like, and to me, that's like, I didn't realize that process until I read Transurfing. right? And so it's like, oh wow, yeah, I've been on the wave of fortune. I've changed my lifelines. I tell you what, I don't know anything about making a movie, nada, nothing. And all of a sudden, I made the decision back to making a choice. It happened. Right?
Yeah, dude. Same, dude. It contextualized so much for me that I had witnessed and experienced and didn't understand. But whenever I read that book, it, for whatever reason, just it categorized all that stuff, all the emotional aspects of what I was able to see other people do and what I was able to do myself and why. Right? Like just by being relatively positive, friendly, and cool to people, and also working really hard, but like seeing both of those things and how they both really matter. It's like I have a friend who's like, maybe he's not the best at his job, let's say. Maybe he's kind of bad at it, and it's even to the point where it's comical. But he's so fun to be around that he always gets hired on every film set because everybody fucking loves the guy, and everybody wants him around. So it's great. So, so that is more important. I say still learn the skill, what I'm saying? Be good at what you're doing, but keep that in mind. Like it's such a big difference. I've said it for years and years. It doesn't matter what job you have. It matters who you do it with. I've had shitty job after shitty job after shitty job after shitty job. And even my dream job still has parts of it that I don't particularly enjoy all the time. And that's part of the nature of it. And that's fine. I've accepted it. I'm not complaining about it. But, whenever I'm with people and around people and I can share that with people that I love, like I'm whistling while I'm at work, you know what I'm saying? Like it's not the same. It's not the same type of challenge. It's more fun. It's not like something's against you. It's like you're taking something on together, and it can be infectious and so much freaking fun. As opposed to just dreading the drudgery and the mundane, the banality of whatever that thing is. Cause there's going to inevitably be some grinding, right? Like the fire doesn't just appear out of nowhere. You got to gather wood. You got to get a stick and, you got to light it somehow. So, so those aspects are always going to be there. But, yeah, I think it's really important to just keep in mind how impactful, that can be. And back to the whole, if things work out, great. If they don't, even better. And that's something that's really easy to kind of get, for me at least, to get to forget, because it seems like you want to have that opportunity or you want that thing to come through, but then sometimes looking back, like for me, Tomorrow World, the second one, I didn't work it. I wasn't able to, and I was kind of upset. And then it became this horrible, gigantic nightmare.
Yeah. So actually, the same thing. I was supposed to work that too, and somehow it didn't happen. And I remember being pissed. And then I remember hearing all the horror stories. I'm like, well, that's why I didn't work that. And the universe protected me, right?
Yep, absolutely. That's crazy because like that festival was like 20 minutes from where I grew up. Like my house where I went to elementary school, was 20 minutes away from there, and driving there was so surreal for a music festival. But yeah, it worked out to where I, who knows, like terrible things happened that second year. They went completely bankrupt. People were injured, hurt. I think some people even
it was their
passed
infrastructure,
away.
right? That's the something downs. Their infrastructure, the roads didn't have, they weren't paved. So when it rains, it all turns to mud, and then it's one lane in, one lane out. And once the road gets blocked, nobody can get in and out. And then, nobody could get the bathrooms pumped and medical attention and all kinds of things. It just goes. And that comes back down to poor planning and poor infrastructure and all kinds of things. Right. But they learned some shit. Actually, from what I understand now is that those grounds have now been redone, and those roads are now paved, and they're prepared to be able to avoid a lot of some of those issues that just compound on each other because of that one issue.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be fair too, that was like an act of God amount of water that was completely unusual for that week, that just happened to be raining for like 10 days in a row. And I mean, it is basic. I mean, there's a lot of rain down here in the Southern Appalachians. So it's almost a rainforest, but even for that, you know, not excusing anything, but it was a freak kind of, I've never seen anything like it, but anyway, yeah, it's crazy. So it's always really easy to see the benefit. What is it? Hindsight's 2020.
Yeah.
Hindsight's 2020. Also, you know, you can see the lesson, you see the positive thing, you see why it's good that it didn't happen for you then. Like I can look back and see myself at 22 or 23 or whatever, trying to be a musician and want to be a rock star and all this shit. Dude, I'm so glad I didn't get locked into some terrible contract, and who knows what it just wasn't what needed to happen. And so I can see that now. At the moment when it fell through, I was disappointed.
Yeah.
But keeping that in mind, like if it works out, great. If it doesn't, even better. And being able to see and know from past experience, hey, this has always benefited me in the past. It's always been to my advantage in the past. So this time it can't be any different. It's just a matter of having that conscious awareness of the character in the story right now.
Controlling your output, not based on the inputs, right? And that's another, you know, it is. It's like, and it really is a good line. If they don't, even better, right? Mm-hmm. And so many times, I've been protected from something not working out, right? But like you just cannot see that in the moment. You know, all you see is your desire and your focus and what it is that you want. And you know, again, you know, I'd be freaking selling cigarette lighters and vending machines at bars and nightclubs when I don't smoke or drink, living in a house with someone I didn't love and in a house I didn't want to be living in, if I didn't lose all those things, right? And so the universe has to make room for you, and a lot of whatever isn't for you isn't going to present itself.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, you don't want somebody else's goal anyway, right?
Yeah,
like you want what's yours. You know, one of my cousins said, if everybody came in and set their problems down in the middle of the room, you'd be fine and happy to leave with yours.
Oh yeah. Yeah, like I'm definitely sticking with these right here.
Right. I want what's mine. I don't want anybody else's thing. You know, he talks about going after other people.
Good. Yeah. I've never heard that before.
You'd be happy to leave with yours.
Oh my goodness. I'm pretty sure that I would take mine over most people's.
Same. You know, you never know what you might find in there that's just like, ooh, I don't know. Wow. You know, and you know, and somebody see my problems and think the exact same thing, you know, which
totally, you know, and it's interesting too, is a lot of times all we see, especially in this day and age of, you know, massive external stimuli, is we see the reward and we see the outcome, but we don't see all of the things that go into it, right? And it's like, you know, you can take something as simple as, I want to be a Major League Baseball star. Well, that means you're going to play 162 games this year in 4 months, and 80 of those games are played someplace else, not where you live, right? And so you're on the road continuously, and don't forget, you got to train all spring to be able to play those 4 months, right? And so you get a couple months a year to yourself. And now, so that might be somebody's cup of tea, that might be somebody's bag, but not everybody's designed for that, right? And it's the same thing. What I didn't realize was, you know, trying to be a rock star is being on the road all the time, right? It ain't necessarily, and then, you know, answering to other people. It ain't the idea. It's like some relationships. The idea of being with somebody is better than actually being with them, right? And so it's like, again, it goes back down to self-deception. What do you really want? What do you really need? And if you start creating and you start living through your now and your purpose, you cut through all that other stuff, and you get to that fulfillment, and you get to that self-love, and you get to the positive consequences of doing something that you like to do, not just doing things, you know, for other reasons, or like money or prestige or because your parents want it or whatever.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I mean, it comes down to getting clear into exactly what you want, eliminating everything that you don't want. It's okay to start out with, here are the things I don't want. You can make a fucking list of shit. I don't like this. I don't want to cut the grass. I don't want to live somewhere hot. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. It's up to you. And you can clear all that stuff out. I found that to be a very powerful and empowering exercise. Because like a lot of times you just sit down and we're like, what do I want? Well, it's not that easy.
What don't you want?
Right,
Don't
right. Get rid of that stuff off the rip. Like, okay, I know I don't want these things. Okay. And then, and then take what it is you think you want and then build an end image, that slide. Right. And so that's sort of your navigation to this thing that's over here, and then reverse engineer that back to you, to where you are now, and say, well, if this character that would be here on its trajectory right now, going through these aspects of the story, right? I really like the idea of evaluating where you are on the timeline of the story too. To me, that gives me so much perspective, because I'm like, yeah, no wonder I'm discouraged, right? Like I'm in the fourth act. The fourth act sucks. It's the most entertaining for the audience, but it's the worst for the character.
For the character, yeah. And you might be on the sequel of the third act of the third sequel.
Absolutely. Yeah, these stories are going on in many different facets, right? Like, so I'm starting out on a brand new journey in one way, and then in another way, I might be in the third act, and so this particular story, you wind up in the fourth act. Well, once you've encountered that a number of times, now you have the resilience and also the presence of mind to understand, I'm in the fourth act. It's the dark night of the soul. This is supposed to suck. It's got to have some pain to it. That just is what it is. This is how I achieve my goal to get to that fifth and final step, the last act, the big resolve, and that whole story can kind of go all the way around, unfold, and continue. And that's awesome. Yeah, so I just dropped the Heal Your Wounds and Find Your True Self audiobook by Lisa Bourbeau. That is such a good book. Oh my God. If you have not listened to that book, I do recommend it. It is really about understanding trauma, your particular soul wound. She talks about the different soul wounds, and you can have more than one, but it's incredibly apt and accurate. It's amazing what she was able to put together. And I do recommend that book. It's really good. When we're getting through, and working out sort of trauma and getting rid of the parts of the story that doesn't suit us, right? Like ideally we want to create a story, a slide, we'll say is synonymous with story in our mind, map model, what have you, that totally serves us, right? So that we project through that, and then the image through that is reflected back to us. We create a very helpful filter for ourselves that we see the world through, that we, continuously put energy toward and through. And in order to do that, sometimes we got to dig a little bit deeper and kind of figure out where we've been traumatized, where we've got some pain, where we've got some hurt, do that shadow work. If you're confused about that, then reach out to us, hop in the Telegram chat or in the Facebook group or whatever, ask a question. Don't be shy. I think the shadow work stuff is some of the most difficult to talk about, and also misunderstood kind of stuff. I think it took for me a little bit of help with that. Not to say that everybody needs help, but for me, it was helpful to do some like Reiki sessions and some other shamanic kind of things that I did that really helped me with that. But everybody's got their own journey, their own path as well.
Well, a lot of times, and this is the problem with therapy, is they just pick and prod and make you re-feel these negative resistances, as opposed to actually digging down and opening up and feeling the feelings from the thing that really messed you up, right? And once you start doing that shadow work, and you do it with someone who's either by yourself with the proper tools, or with someone who's really good, and you actually, heal those wounds, you see the world from an entirely different angle. And and that's when, you know, you can really see that it happened for me and not to me, you know, and it's tough, man. You know, it's like, and you know, there's different levels. Like my core, um, my core trauma was abandonment and betrayal, right? And I already knew it, and I could go back to the exact moment, and it was extreme, so it was easy to identify. But I have a friend who has the exact same core trauma, right? But his was so subtle that he didn't even know it or understand it, and it took really a lot of digging to figure it out. And so once he figured it out, and once he understood how subtle it was like, I don't even know how I could have felt that way. It was so minimal, right? And you don't know where people are, right? And it's like we both had the exact same core trauma, right? And that core trauma was guiding all of our behaviors and all of our outputs. And and you know, if you were to put each of them side by side, you would mine is so more extreme than his, but you can't take away what that trauma actually is, right? It still affected him in the exact same way. And so, you know, it's hard to dig in and really find some of these spaces that because ultimately we got coping mechanisms, and we put this filter on, right? Because of it's a coping mechanism, and it's a filter and a distortion on what reality is, and we continue to operate through that coping mechanism. And what we're doing is we are resisting feeling that moment, and then we continue to work with those coping mechanisms, and we continue to get triggered, and we continue in that negative cycle, right? But until you really sit down and just like, holy shit, that was a terrible moment, and I did feel bad, and it's okay, and I can let this go, and I can also forgive the people involved. Then you release this powerful distortion that is literally destroying different parts of your life, whether if it's professionally or emotionally or whatever. And you can do that with a lot of things. And then the more deeper you do the work, you realize like, oh my God, I didn't realize I was hanging on to this, and I was hanging on to that. And like literally like your whole emotional structure is this jungle gym of just complete delusion or self-delusion or self-protection, right? And so yeah, that shadow work, it really is important stuff, but it's scary because it takes stepping into the pain. It takes feelings that you didn't want to feel then, that you definitely don't want to feel now.
No
right?
shit,
And
right?
you've been avoiding it the entire time, right?
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately those digging all that stuff up is important, and you can dig it up wrongly and dig it up in a way that'll hurt you. You can dig it up in a way that'll heal you. And so, you know, that shadow work, it takes a little bit of self-discovery and patience with yourself, and a lot of loving of yourself, right? It's like you aren't your pain, you aren't your suffering, you aren't your trauma, and you know, you have to separate yourself from those things. And giving you the main distortions or filters that help you, stay in your own way.
Yeah, those are those sticking points, those little speed bumps, you know, the edges of what you'll allow for yourself. So to kind of get down there and dig into that trauma, it's not fun. I've had a couple people that I've worked with, and it's draining, man, doing the coaching of it. Like it really is so much emotional energy. And we were riffing a little bit earlier, you know, thinking about jokes and some comedy and stuff, but it's like, man, it really can be a lot, because you know, we all have some painful shit that has happened to us throughout our development. But in order to really open that up, you got to start working your way down and doing that shadow work, which you were saying you've been having all kinds of crazy, vivid dreams. I think that's a big part of that shadow
Oh,
work.
well, you know what? I haven't smoked pot in over a month, right? And it's like one of those things. It's like, you know, especially, you know, when I'm out at music festivals and working, it's the way that the community shares, and you know, it's a sit down. It's very communal, and you know, I got towards the end of the music festival season, and I'm just like, I'm just not interested. It's not a priority. You know, I got limited funds, and my funds need to be towards my goals, and so I just stopped stopped smoking. I bought a bottle of wine a month and a half ago. I still haven't drinking it. It's like I'm not engaging in these things, and so I put my bed facing north. Man, the dreams have been insane. And I stay up working all late all night and go to bed at like 6 or 7 a.m. And it's always the same thing. The dreams hit me around 11:30, and they go hardcore till about 1:30, and I can wake up even to like my mom vacuuming or something, and go right back to bed and go right back into the dream right where I was leading off. And lately it's just been ex-girlfriends and friends in trouble and like all kinds of weird stuff, and none of it's been too weird. So a lot of times I haven't had this "am I dreaming?" question, because it all seems like my life is so crazy. It's so fun and like it seems on point with the things that could happen. And every now and then there's a couple weird things, and I'll be like, am I dreaming? And then I just continue to go with it. But they've been so vivid lately. Like I wake up and now they seem like memories, where like sometimes when you're not really with the dream state and aware of it, often you get up and it's sort of like, I have this vague recollection. No, like I now got memories of one of my close friends and I, he got in trouble with the law and his bounty hunters are chasing him and stuff. None of it was real. It was all a dream. But like we were going all over the country and doing all kinds of stuff and evading all this stuff. And I was helping him. And I'm like, I woke up and I'm like, I worked with him last week and we didn't have any of these experiences, but I have this memory of us doing it. I'm like, wow. I'm like, I've gotten so sober and so into work and play and gotten rid of the external inputs, that now my internal stimuli is just going haywire. I feel like the next movie is coming up soon in one of these dreams, man. Like I'm just gonna be like, that's a movie.
Dude, I mean, that's the cool thing. So I've been so fucking binary. And by the way, are you in the Dream Telegram chat?
I'm not, but you can send me over a Telegram link. I'll check it out.
I'll send you an invite. Anybody in here, if you want to check that out, get into the main Telegram and just chirp up, be a squeaky wheel in there, and we'll get you in there if you want to get into the Dream chat. But I've just been so binary about this. We did a book club not too long ago. I want to do another book club on Tufty. I'll send you my copy if you want, because I got the audiobook and I'll probably just wind up listening to it like probably 3 or 4 times. And it's way shorter than Reality Transurfing. So it's not something that, is going to take 2 months. It's like we could be done in 2 weeks and we're done, maybe it'll be a lot easier. But we did the Dream Searchers. And I just kind of like I had compartmentalized the dream world and the real world. And it's like, dude, that shit is overlapping all the time. It ain't just the dream world and the real world. It's like every thought, every image, all that stuff, that's all metaphysical dream stuff. So we're daydreaming through life. We're seeing these images. I want, to kind of get into more of that creative. That's my goal. That's my passion, at least for now, right? Like who knows what happens down the road, but that's where I'm at. So I've been pursuing it too and doing some of these meditations and trying to induce some lucid dreams and stuff like that. But yeah, man, I mean, I think there's a lot that can be learned from dreams for unpacking trauma too, because it's your subconscious being like, yo, you work on this thing, right? And like, if Abby's the best at it, it's kind of like seeing and sort of interpreting from not from like some weird level of dream interpretation kind of thing, but instead like kind of putting you at the epicenter of the dream and being like, okay, this is you showing you that you need to do X, Y, and Z, what have you. But yeah, we need to be lucid. She says we need to be lucid and waking and dreaming. And those two worlds, they cross over. It's not, I've just been, I can't believe how dualistic I've been about that. But anyway, I think that's exactly right. Like, so in that Dream Searchers book, they're all the time practicing their dream stuff. and they're like they're working in the dream and they're working in reality. They're sort of doing both. And I think that's so let's see here. We got some good stuff. The dream space is the subconscious marrying the conscious. Yeah, I mean, exactly. And so that's what we want to go for in our physical life too, right? That's that intention. So you get into a lucid dream and you start flying around like a boss, then you can use that same power, the power of intention, in your waking life, real life, physical life, 3D life, whatever you want to call it. And you can use that same exact power. So that's the cool thing about that. So, something we've all been doing. Dreams can really show us where we need to heal, and it can definitely be a fun playground. But the more lucid we are, the more we're able to zero in on our character, our avatar, our main, all the world's a stage, and just zero in on that. Like the more power that's going to generate for us to create as well. And I mean, if anybody knows about it, it's Wendy's in the chat too, and Kevin too. Really, really cool. Wendy's stuff is awesome. I can't wait to hear from you, Wendy. I'll ping you after this live stream if you're still up. She's in Australia, so I don't know what fucking time it is there. There's no doubt.
They're waking up right now. I think it's like 10 a.m.
Probably so. Well, that's the thing about it. She kind of keeps an odd schedule as you do, and as an artist. And then a lot of times it'll be this time, and I'm I pass out kind of early. I get drained. I'm tired by 11 or 12 at night usually. So she says it's almost 3 p.m. in the afternoon. So that shouldn't be a terribly inconvenient time to shoot. I'll shoot you a message after this.
So I've been going to, when I go to bed, I literally, what I was saying all last week is I'm going to remember my dream. And then I was also saying, like, I'm going to realize I'm dreaming. But I'm always late to realize it. It's like always towards the end when it's like really, I've been in bed too long and it's kind of like my conscious body's like, hey, are we going to do some shit today or what? And, but yeah, it's definitely like, and I definitely had some like ex-girlfriend dreams, whereas like my ex-girlfriend's father was helping me move or move out or move some shit. And it seemed so reasonable that I couldn't challenge it. Like, I was like, oh yeah, I'm not with this girl no more. And like, of course her dad would help me move all this shit out of here. And there was nothing to like make me question it, and but a lot of times I had another dream where I was in Arkansas in a space where there wasn't water, and I was with an old friend and a bunch of like, I don't, yeah, it's tough to say. Maybe it was like street gangs or something was trying to like, was trying to get us and like trying to get us to buy drugs and trying to do some weird stuff. I couldn't say like staying a street gang. It doesn't even make sense either. But it was like, there was like with boat races and water and like, things, there was always something impending.
That's an action.
Yeah. And like, but like whenever anything happens, I had the same, and this is the most beautiful thing about this last couple of weeks of dreams. I had the same dream over and over and over for most of my life. And it was usually authority chasing me in a prison or a boat or some kind of confined area. And they'd almost catch me. And then I would just fly away and be like, yeah, fuck you guys. And I stopped having that dream. So it's like, it's interesting to have new dreams that make no sense.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, dude, this is why Abby's the GOAT, dude. She's like, you're moving through some shit. You're getting rid of some emotional baggage you avoided. Well, forgive me for the unsolicited dreams.
Hey, whatever.
I just can't. She just is tuned in. Like, and this makes the most sense too, especially in light of that Heal Your Wounds book. Cause I've had this experience where I've had dreams of, I was babysitting of my parents' children, which is me, obviously. Right. Like, and so, and interactions with these kids where they're thanking me for taking the time to acknowledge them. And that's just me.
Well, that's some inner child stuff.
Yeah, that's me carving out the time to go into myself. Right. Like, and so myself is telling me, thank you. I waited 30 something years to legitimately sit down and do, to do that work. And so, the more that I put that time in, the more of a reward it is. And it shows me, new things that I can heal and all this different kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, I think generally speaking, a lot of times it is us communicating to ourselves. There's all kinds of crazy shit that happens in a dream. Ain't nobody going to be able to tell you what everything means or whatever.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I do think that main narrative is, hey, your higher self, your subconscious showing you some things, and maybe, giving some ideas too. Yesterday was written in a dream. The Beatles song, apparently Paul McCartney dreamt that. Lots of great ideas have come through that dream space, or even the liminal space, right? Like that space between dreaming and waking. And I think there's a lot of power there. Like all the Monroe Institute stuff, all the gateway stuff, like that shit's really powerful, man. Doing the hemisync. The hemisync stuff is so good. And Monroe, I think the Monroe Institute, as far as like all the supernatural practices kind of stuff, I mean, I think they kind of have the market cornered on most of that stuff, because they were working on that shit in the 60s with the CIA and stuff, So
well, yeah, that's like I had a friend that was telling me about how he had a dream, and like he knew he wasn't like necessarily in a dream, and like it seemed like he was maybe like lucid dreaming, because he was like controlling where he was going. And then all of a sudden, in his lucid dream, the United States Army showed up, and they wanted to know how he got there, and they wanted him to go with them. And he's like, I'm not going anywhere with you guys. It's like, he's like, I don't know where you guys came from, but I'm staying the hell away from you. But I had another weird dream the other night too. Like, I was in a house that lots of friends had lived at, in it's a town I haven't been in a long time. And lots of friends had lived in that same apartment, and the bathroom was always broken in that apartment. And now I'm in this apartment with new people that I don't really recognize. And I remember their bathroom didn't work. The bathroom didn't work again. This is like 30 years later. And I'm like, I'm cursing the landlord. I'm literally like, man, this guy still ain't fixing this shit. And 30 years later. And but it was amazing. It was like I knew exactly where I was. And the people were familiar, but the space was very familiar. But the bathroom didn't work, and then I went in there. It was just puke everywhere, and I was just like, yeah, I wasn't grossed out by it, but I was like, definitely don't need to go in there.
She goes, so Abby's like, toilet is broke, or what part of the bathroom is broken?
The toilet wasn't connected. There was just a hole in the floor that actually one of the people in the house had pooped in the hole where the toilet belonged. And like, of
course they did.
Yeah. And it was like,
whoops.
Yeah. And so, yeah. And it wasn't even like someone actually puked or they were puking anything, or I saw them puke. There was just like bile and little splotches all over the room, and it was yellow. And I was just like, man, I was like, puke is definitely one of those things for me that I doesn't agree well. I smell it, see it, hear it, all set, right? And I didn't have, and like in that space, I didn't have my normal reaction. I was just like, all right, so what? And I was more concerned with the bathroom didn't work, and that landlord still wasn't taking care of his shit, right? And it's like, and I was like trying to talk the inhabitants of the house into like getting that motherfucker in there to fix the place. And they had some reason, I can't remember exactly what it was, but they didn't want anybody in the house. And I was like, and then that's when I started to question the dream. I'm like, who are these people? And what are they doing that they don't want the landlord here? And why am I here? I don't even remember getting. And that's like, as I woke up, because I was like, I don't even remember entering this room. I was like, how am I here? And then I woke up asking that question.
That's awesome. Yeah, dude, that's awesome. No, I mean, there's definitely, we don't dream for no reason. It's not like we're not here for no reason. I've said this a bajillion times, like we're here for something, and that's up to each and every one of us to determine that. But at the same time, it ain't fucking nothing. So yeah, I mean, yeah, she's the best when it comes to this stuff. It's pretty freaking cool. We'll definitely get you in that chat. And everybody, if you're watching this, if you want to hop in there, just say something in the main Telegram chat. There's a link for that. There's links for that all over. There's links in the Instagram bio and the website and the everywhere. You know, you can find the Telegram link pretty easily. And yeah, hop in there. The dream stuff is very, very. I think it's very relevant and worth the energy. So it's pretty cool. And, you know, lots of support and encouragement and other people's weird dreams in there. And people have been very, they've been very vulnerable, you know, and been honest and talked about the dreams that they've had and different things. Some I've had, I'm like, well, I'm not going to post that, but, but you know, it's up to your discretion and all that stuff. But yeah. So that Heal Your Wounds, Find Your True Self book, that is such a good book. Really, really took a lot of value out of that. And then, you know, some of these folks, Abby's one and Janine, they start to talk about too, the parts in your body where certain organs are and the significance of all of that kind of stuff. So this stuff can go like the Enneagram, super deep, where we can see, you know, a nice diagram on the surface that makes sense, but studying all the connections and all the tissues and all the things that bring that all together for lots and lots of time. You can, it's like exploring Yellowstone, you know, you can spend your whole life there and still not see everything.
No kidding.
Yeah. But yeah, man, I think that's a good place for us to kind of wrap this up. And I want to thank everybody. I'll come for closing thoughts too, if anybody has anything, but I want to thank you guys for hanging out and chatting with us in the chat and being so freaking active in there. It's awesome. It's so much fun and I really appreciate it. So thank you for that. And hopefully you guys, I put a couple different links in there. I know I have the little manifestation guide thing that's in the description of the video. You can go to bluecollarmystics.org and get the blueprint to happiness and the mentalism emails and the Heal Your Wounds thing I put in there and a couple other little audio books that I won't say out loud, but yeah, if there's anything that you're thinking about, curious about, want to share, please feel free. I've got some great guests that I've been talking to who are coming up. It's going to be a lot of fun this December. It's going to be a great winter. Really excited about it. I'm going to be home more, sort of nesting in a sense. I got an interview coming out with Nicole BZ, the anti-business business coach, coming out tomorrow. My friend Sarah Malone just posted and a podcast that I was on. She's great. We met at the Grimerica thing. The Grimerica thing, by the way, is super cool. The mountain magic manifestation. We're going to be on Mount Shasta this year, and tickets are up. There's only a few spots left. So if you're interested in doing that, check it out. It's contact@thecabin.com. And I need to put that link somewhere on the website, and I will do that. But thank you guys so much. Any final thoughts? What are you? Is there anything you want to direct people to, James, or anything you want to add?
You know, currently I'm just working on rebranding the Sonic Portal for outside of the festival market, and working on what I call the Mantrayana, which is a Sanskrit word for sound vehicle. And so, yeah, I got the Mantrayana on Instagram, but you know, you can still find me on Sonic Portal. I'm just not trying to use a psychedelic spaceship to be a function of profit outside of the festival arena. And so that's basically what I've been working on most. And yeah, so I hope to see, and anybody wants to message me at Sonic Portal at Instagram.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody. You guys made our night, dude. It's amazing how the mirror reflects like that. Thanks for hanging out, everybody here. All you fine folks in the chat, you're wonderful. Have a wonderful night. Have amazing dreams, and we will see you all very, very, very soon. Peace. Have a great night.
Be well.